Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here. This is the 13th edition of DefCamp, and for me, it's actually the 9th time I am attending this conference. So today we're going to be talking about a project of ours on how to find phishing pages using Favicons. So first of all, so I'm a security researcher at Keysight Technologies. Andrei is a fourth-year student at the college. And this year we've worked together during his summer internship on this particular project. Just a bit of a disclaimer. So this is not going to be a presentation about detecting phishing pages, but more about how to find them and how to use various queries and how to restrict some let's say queries and searchings in order to find these pages. Here you go.
Yep. So basically, the idea of the project was to find new sources for potentially malicious websites by leveraging Shodan.io and also Favicons. So we wanted to gain insights from our previous detections in order to view if we can find some similarities between these phishing sources. Now, why would you want to use Favicons? The premise is that Favicons might be used by malicious websites because they want to look as legit as possible, so just like the legitimate websites. Okay, so how can we search for Favicons using Shodan? Shodan uses some hashes for these Favicons. They're not using SHA-1 or MD5. They're using something called the murmur hash, which is a non-cryptographic hash function that is generally used for hash-based lookup. This is how it looks like, and this is also, there's a Python library that can calculate these hashes for you. Now, we know how to search for them, but we don't know what to search for. So we need to build a sort of Favicon database. How can we do this? One way would be to just search for some brand ranking websites that for the most phished brands, and then just try to scrape the icon from that website. But that's a bit tedious, so what we did instead is that Shodan provides us with this Favicon map, which more specifically is these are the top 5,000 most used Favicons on the websites that Shodan indexes. And now we basically have this database of the most used brands that we can leverage after this. Okay, now Shodan provides us with a couple of API tiers. We have chosen for the 10K queries a month. One query can give you around 100 results. But now we have a problem. One icon can return you from 0 to 100,000 results of websites. So we need to try to see what other filters we can leverage so that we meet these three objectives. One, to fit within the quota. Second, to find as many phishing websites or potentially phishing websites as possible. And three, to filter out the legitimate websites. So in order to find these filters, what we did is we took our websites from our phishing, from our threat intelligence database that we knew are phishing websites, and we queried for information about them from Shodan. And we found these interesting facts. Half of them had these combinations of ports open. A third of them had these other combinations. And again, a third of them were affected by these vulnerabilities. Also, half of the hosts had their SSL certificates issued by Sectigo, Let's Encrypt, or cPanel. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't use the information about the ports on Shodan because the searching mechanism is quite limited. So you can't really search for hosts that have both ports, let's say 21, 22, and 80 open. If you try to search for this, they only return hosts that had either one of these hosts. So you don't have the end operator between these hosts. But what we did instead is that we used these SSL certificates and to try to filter this. So we filtered out all the organizations and the SSL certificate providers that had more than 200, respectively 50 results. The idea being that, for example, if we have a company like Google, which also has their own certificate authority that issues their own certificates, we're not interested in these results because they're legitimate and we know they're good. But we did include these SSL providers like Let's Encrypt and ZeroSSL that we had identified in the previous step. And we queried for these results. Now, Shodan has a really cool feature that is called Shodan Facets, that lets you run your queries and return the number of results that query would return. But it doesn't actually run the query, so it doesn't use your API queries. So it's free, basically. And now at the end, you get all these results, and you can sort them by using the vulnerabilities that the number of vulnerabilities for a website. Because if a website has is affected by some of these vulnerabilities, it might mean that it's a phishing website. It's not necessary, but it's a good indicator.
Thank you. So a couple of results here. Once we set up this whole, let's say, project to start collecting data, we could easily find around 2.3 million URLs per week, or IPs, domains. So I'm not sure what order of magnitude to give you for this, but essentially, think about it, this is pretty much like a $70 project that you can generate like over 2 million URLs and domains that you can then crawl per week. We also looked into some of this distribution per favicon or brands to see which are the most interesting or let's say popular brands that have most assets, let's say on Shodan, and not surprisingly, there's eBay, Apple, Microsoft, Adobe, and Outlook in the top 5, which is going to correlate sooner or later with the number of phishing pages as well. So looking into some of the examples, just to give you how these results look like and how they map out to the Shodan information that we can see. So looking at this website, this is one of the IPs that we collected from by using all these filters. It's actually a page that prompts us to log into Coinbase. Once you put your email, it's going to prompt you back with a CAPTCHA, which surprisingly doesn't actually work. You can put anything in there. It's going to say it's all good. Keep going. And finally, I asked you to reset your password and then give you like a loading screen that's never actually ending. So that's kind of suspicious initially, even if there's no, let's say, alerts in your browser about like certificates or whatnot. But what's interesting if start digging in Shodan is that you see, so this IP address is actually from Netherlands. It's got only 2 open ports, so it's like SSH and port 80 standards. It has a bunch of vulnerabilities, which again goes back to what we previously mentioned. So a lot of the legitimate infrastructure, let's say from a brand, not typically find that many vulnerabilities, especially And if we go back to the web pages and start looking in the code there, it's pretty obvious. It's a phishing page. Passwords, SMS, apps, IDs, and then all these, let's say, pages based on whatever credentials or emails you provide. Some other interesting examples would be we found an Apple, like say, clone, which actually looks pretty good initially at first glance, but there's it's iPhone 12. That was a couple of years ago. They're not even trying too hard. Now, going back to some of the limitations, because this approach also has some limitations, and we wanted to cover that as well. So this approach will only give you results from Shodan that are like based on like the base URI or base domain. You're not going to get any URI domains with the path included unless there's like redirects. Also, there's some issues. So, for example, if you would want to change one byte in the favicon, that would essentially change the whole favicon hash, which essentially is going to ruin your queries. On the other hand, though, if you do find, let's say, favicons that have these like small bytes and changes, you can use something like SSDeep in order to cluster them and essentially say, this looks almost exactly like a legitimate favicon for a specific brand, and you can use that to find pretty much only these kind of changes. And also, this is not going to work out if you're using the image-based detection for some of the brands. For example, if you got the services like login, like Microsoft hosted services, where all these pages pretty much look alike, you're not going to be able to use something like a detection mechanism based on screenshots or image-based. No. And finally, there were some really weird results that we found during our searches, and some of them are actually, there were a couple of them tied to Google. So there's a couple of Google web pages which are actually hosted in so this is a Google page for South Korea, which is how it's hosted on an Oracle Cloud infrastructure with a weird name. It has some security contacts in Google, but it's using a Let's Encrypt certificate. So it's not a phishing page per se, but it's just weird. It's not something that you'd probably see in a legitimate Google page. And finally, one of the my favorite example for this weird stuff is this domain, feed.mrpst.ir. So it's an Iranian domain, which is hosting a Google page for a Finnish-related Google page, which is again hosted not in Iran, it's hosted in Turkey. Let's encrypt the certificate, but it actually provides you like all these legitimate, let's say, redirects towards Google if you try clicking. So I'm not sure what those are, but yeah. And finally, there's a lot of, there's a lot of improvements to be done with this project. So yeah, that was our presentation. Thank you for attending. I'm not sure if there's going to be time for questions now or maybe after the next presentation.
Okay, so in your presentation, you said that you were filtering the websites via Shodan based on the fact that the servers are vulnerable to certain things.
Yeah.
Why is that a good indicator of a phishing website? Why should a phishing website be vulnerable to other things?
It's not let's say, exclusion. So we're not looking only for the IPs domains that have vulnerabilities, but based on our let's say initial correlation of what we had in our threat intelligence database and what we found that this link. So usually hosts that have vulnerabilities that on Shodan are more likely to have like some phishing websites as well. So it's not a direct correlation, but it's a good indicator. Similar to the certificates part. It's not directly correlated, but when you put all these filters together, you eliminate a lot of the, let's say, legitimate assets out there. So that's kind of the reasoning.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Very nice, very interesting research. My question is, you know that usually the life of a phishing site is a few days, and the goal is done in a few days. How, in your research, you're doing handling these phishing sites? For example, like phishing sites of financial institutions or government institutions. What is your opinion based on your research?
So I think there's two aspects to it. So first, this is not, let's say, like any other, let's say, security solution. It's not going to be, this is the way to go and this is the only way to go. So this is one aspect of using or trying to find in, let's say, conjunction with other methods. from what I remember when we started doing this, we had cases when you would find pages that would, you would find them today and tomorrow they're not going to be active. But at the same time, there are cases, or a lot of cases, when a lot of these websites would just persist. So things that we found like 1 or 2 months ago, they're still alive today.